Hold it tight. How's everybody doing today? I certainly hope you're doing well. It's time for another edition of Story Time. And I like to let people know whether or not it's a true story. It's not a true story. It's a story in which I created. The name of the story is called Sin Foil. So let's go ahead and begin. You see, Robert had met this woman at work, and her name was Catherine. And Robert and Catherine, I tell you what, they went out for a couple of drinks one night. They sparked up these conversations. It was going to be a long friendship, but a little bit closer than a friendship, if you get my meaning. So, you know something is going on when each party between Robert and Catherine, both of them are looking forward to going to work the next day, of course, because they get to see each other. Because Robert and Catherine, they're not living together. Oh no, they're just mere friends. And a couple of months go by, and well, things get a little bit more serious. Before you know it, management gets involved and says, no. You can't be having relationships at work. You can't be doing that. No sir, no ma'am. Nope. Because you see, that becomes a conflict of interest. Favoritism, maybe higher wages or some sort of compromising situation when it comes to business. So management told them, you're to stop this relationship immediately, or one of you has to go, or both of you have to go. So Catherine decided, you know something, it was time for her to move on. And she was in accounting, and she knew she could get a job somewhere else really easily. So that's what she did. Robert was left behind. But the relationship went on and on and on, and it started getting a lot more serious. Hell, before you knew it, well, Robert and Catherine, they moved in together. They sure did. I tell you what, they went out shopping. They got all of the kitchen supplies and the living room, and they picked out all of the bedroom furniture and the nightstands. I tell you what, this is becoming a little bit more than just your average everyday relationship. This is becoming close to marriage. Yeah. Because, you know, all the women, they really love the word marriage in most cases. I mean, to be picked out of the lot and for one man to marry one woman and to be absolute soulmates. Oh yeah. Catherine was looking forward to that, but Robert didn't really spring the question to her until about a year and a half later. I was pretty romantic too, because they just went out on an outing, and they went to some ball game. Then after the ball game, they went over to a friend's house, and all the other friends, they knew for sure that Robert was going to hit her with a question, but was going to do it under some sort of surprise. Because after all, going to a ball game and then going to a friend's house for a big old party, a woman's not going to suspect anything like that. Oh no. No sir, no ma'am. But you see, as they're at the party there, a limousine pulls up. The owner of the property comes in and says, hey Robert, your limousine's here. Catherine's kind of like, you got a limousine? So they get in the limousine together, just them. And they go to just an exquisite eatery on top of a hill. And there's a lightning storm like you can't even imagine. And it's raining. Boy, it's raining hard too. And off in the distance, you can see the lightning strikes throughout the city. And as they're drinking their wine and eating their pastry, Robert hits her with a question. Will you marry me? And what does Catherine do? Boy, she's kind of shocked. She didn't figure that, well, she'd go from a ball game to a house party. Suddenly you're in a limousine. Now you're perched up at an eatery, eating some sort of pastries and drinking wine. To where Robert finally hit her with a question. Well, she couldn't rightly say no. I mean, she could, but she didn't. Oh, no, she sure didn't. It's about this time, too, August. And it's funny because they had a camping trip all planned to go up in the mountains. Just Robert and Catherine. See, Robert had all the gear, too. He had all the tents, and he had the camping equipment, and he had the fishing poles and the fishing licenses. He knew right where to go. He sure did, because he was an avid camper. Yeah, and fisherman, and outdoorsman, and hunter. Wow. Boy, it was a good time there. But you see, Catherine, it's not that she was having second thoughts. No, sir, no, ma'am. She just wanted to be sure that Robert was the right person for her. Even though they're still living together. And it was a romantic evening, perched up there at the eatery, eating their pastry, drinking their wine with a lightning show in the background. Wow, it was kind of special. But it's not like she has actual video representation of the night. She can only recall, she can only remember. So on a Thursday afternoon, she decided to go shopping with her friends. And she came across like a Swiss Army store or something, where they sell military backpacks, MREs, even guns. She was talking to the woman behind the counter, and the woman was telling her about a certain situation, on how she absolutely saves relationships. That's odd. Why would there be a woman behind a counter at a Swiss Army store talking about saving relationships? What the hell does that even mean? Well, Catherine wanted to know a little bit more about this saving relationships. She goes, well, what do you mean about saving relationships? You know, I'm deemed to get married here pretty quick. Because Robert, he asked me to marry him. And I said, yes, of course I did. And the woman across the counter said to her, now, are you sure that Robert is the man for you? Are you positive? How do you know that he's not a cheater? How do you know that he's not a gambler? How do you know he's not hooked on drugs? How do you know so many things? Catherine's like, well, I've known him for years now. I met him at work. We've done a lot of things together. We even got a place, and we picked out our own furniture, and we got our kitchenware and our bedroomware. We've gone to parties. I've met his friend. He's met mine. Robert's a good guy. He wouldn't do that. Robert loves me, see. That's what she told this woman. She's pretty emphatic about it, too. And the woman behind the counter said, listen, what I have in my hand is magic. This is magic that is going to save your relationship. She's like, that's tin foil. That's not magic. You have a box of tin foil. How is that magic? She goes, no, this is not tin foil. This is sin foil. Sin foil? Well, how does it work? She goes, this is the key. You're going to go camping with your boyfriend. What's his name? She's like, well, it's Robert. Known him for years now. She goes, what you're going to do is when you go camping, let's say he catches a fish, or he wants to cook something on the open fire. He has to touch the tin foil. For example, to wrap a fish, he has to touch it with his hands. And as soon as he places the fish wrapped in the tin foil on the fire, you're going to have a visual representation of all of his sins in the last 30 days. She'd be, but I trust Robert. He wouldn't do. She goes, ma'am, I'm giving you an offer to save your relationship. Either you're going to take the offer or you're going to walk out this door not knowing if this person is right for you or not. Catherine looked at the woman. She looked at the tin foil. She looked at the woman. She looked at the tin foil. She looked at her watch. She looked at the door. She started to walk away. She goes, how much for the tin foil? The woman behind the counter said, oh, it's free. It's free. Because knowledge is power. And this could save your relationship. And Catherine said to her, how would it save my relationship if something's wrong? It would destroy the relationship. And the woman behind the counter said, no, it would not destroy the relationship. It would, in fact, save the relationship. She doesn't know what to think. She's very confused. She thinks the woman is talking in circles. The woman hands her the tin foil. She grabs the tin foil. She thinks it's a bunch of hogwash, first of all. She doesn't believe a lick of it. So come Friday, they're in preparation. Robert's in preparation. He's getting all of the camping equipment all together. He's getting the tents and the pots and the pans and the fishing poles and the tackle and the bait and all this stuff. Because they're going to go on a romantic camping trip up in the mountains. And she has her tin foil. Oh, yes, she does. Because she wants to see what kind of sins, if any, that Robert has been involved with. So they pack up, they get in the vehicle, off to the mountains they go. They're both singing in the car. You know how it is, right? Having a great time. But in the back of her mind, she's thinking to herself, you know what, I got this tin foil that's going to show me all of the sins, but he has to touch this. I can't touch it. He's got to touch it. Because it's his sins from his hands. So they get up into the mountains, they clear out a space there, they set up the tents and all that, and he's digging a fire hole, then a little privy over there. Oh, it's nice, man. And just for an added touch, you know, Robert, because he's kind of a creative cat, he brings some candles and some wine, and I tell you what, it's a good time there. So they go hiking for a bit. And it's getting kind of dark. A little bit chilly too. They nestle up in the tent there. They got a fire going. And the next day, they're getting ready for breakfast. So they just cook some eggs, some bacon that they brought along with them. And Robert alerts her and says, you know something, Catherine, if we want to eat, I'm going to have to catch you some food, whether it's small game or fish. So I'm a pretty good fisherman, so let's go fishing. So she's like, nah, I don't want to be doing fishing. I don't like fishing. They're slimy and I'm just not into it. So she just goes along with him, and he's fishing, and he's doing well too. He's catching some browns, rainbow trouts. Boy, good sized trout, right? And he's gutting them right there, and he's putting them in the cooler because later they're going to have that for supper. Oh, yeah. And Robert makes a little comment to her that she found a little bizarre. He says to her, you know something, after I asked you to marry me, and you had mentioned to your mother that we're going to get married, you know, I had a little talk with her about making certain arrangements and where would be the best place, and I hope you didn't mind. We talked about where you were raised and maybe, you know, things of your past. She goes, well, why would you mention that to me? Just out of the blue. I don't even understand it. He goes, well, I was just kind of thinking about it because I suppose I shouldn't really ask your mother about where you want to get married and your background and all that stuff. So, Catherine, where do you want to get married? Where? She goes, well, I don't know. I hadn't really laid much thought to it, but when I figure it out, we'll discuss it. Maybe a place that you like and a place that I like. So it's just not all on me. He goes, oh, okay. So they get back to the campsite, see? He builds a big old massive fire because he's got to cook these fish, right? And he asks Catherine, wrap that couple of trout there. Just wrap it up in that tinfoil there. She goes, oh no, I'm not touching that. Those fish are slimy. They're disgusting. Ooh, you wrap it. Knowing full good and well why he's got to touch that tinfoil. So he grabs his tinfoil and he looks at it. Where did you get this? Why is it this weird, like, pinkish tint? What is going on here? She goes, oh, I picked it up at, the Swiss Army. That's all they had. He doesn't think anything of it. He takes the fish and he wraps up the fish. He folds it over. He puts it on the fire. He takes another fish. He wraps it up. Folds it over. Puts it in the fire. He goes, I'm going to go and pick up all the fishing gear over by the lake and such. And he walks away. And she's looking down, and sure enough, she's seeing a video representation in the tinfoil of what he's done in the past 30 days. And she is in shock. She can't believe it. Robert comes back to the campsite. He's got the fishing poles and the buckets and the cooler and all that stuff. And Catherine is sobbing. She's crying hysterically. Of course, Robert puts all the stuff down. He's trying to comfort her. He's like, baby, what is wrong? Gosh, what are you so upset about? She's like, get away from me. Get away from you? What is your problem? Then they start getting some sort of confrontation, little argument. And she says, I want to know why you're cheating on me. He goes, cheating on you? With who? I haven't been around anyone but you. You're the only one for me. I haven't been around anyone. What are you talking about? She goes, you've been cheating on me with my own mother. And she smacks him as hard as she can right upside his head. She starts beating it, punching on, carrying on, and he's like, what? And he's trying to explain, you know how it is, right? So they kind of like go their separate ways there on the campsite. And she is livid, boy. She is furious. And she's thinking in the back of her head, I should have never picked up that tinfoil. I should have never gone to that Swiss Army store. I should have never listened to that woman, because this woman has destroyed our relationship. It has not saved it. What was my mother thinking? How could Robert do this to me? This is a breach of confidence on both sides between my family and the person that she was going to marry. She was at a loss. So she's sitting there by the fire. The fire is starting to die down a little bit. I can imagine that the fish is probably burnt by now, wrapped up in that sin foil and such. She has her hand down on a sheet of the sin foil herself. Robert comes over and tries to comfort her and says, you know, it's not really my fault. Your mother kind of came on, and just giving all these excuses. She goes up to smack him again, and he kind of moves out of the way, and the sin foil that she was touching herself flitted into the fire. And as that happened, Robert looked down and saw the visual representation of her sins in the last 30 days. And can you imagine what he saw? Can you imagine? Can you imagine her sins that he saw? Let's go back in time to the beginning of the story. When they were at work, and the manager told her that he or her would have to quit their positions or the relationship would end abruptly, so that way there would not be a conflict of interest. It was her having an affair with the manager of her previous job. So now they're in the same boat. Robert is having an affair with her mother, and she is having an affair with her previous boss. What to do? Oh my. And Robert is like, where did you get this tinfoil? She goes, well, it's not tinfoil, it's sinfoil. And I've seen your sins for the last 30 days, and apparently you've seen mine. So, I tell you what we're going to do. It is my suggestion that both of us take a break from this relationship and figure out what we're going to do 30 days from now, or 45, or 6 months. She kind of like put her head down and said, yeah, it just happened, you know. I mean, we knew each other, and he's trying to explain to her about the situation with her own mother. What to do? So as they got in the vehicle and they packed up all the camping equipment, it's time to head home. That very uncomfortable ride home with absolute silence. No radio, no singing like they were doing on the way back. Absolute and utter silence. That uncomfortable silence that is so piercing of the mind. You would much rather have some sort of confrontation, argument, screaming, yelling, but silence? Oh man. Silence will pierce any mind, especially of two people that have been inseparable for so many years. So they drive up into the driveway. Sure, Robert could slam the door and carry on and about, but he was just as guilty as her, and she was just as guilty as he. So both of them were in the exact same boat, and both of the people that they both cheated on with knew the other person. Wow. What to do? So Catherine gets out of the vehicle there. She gently closes the door, not a slam. They both go into the house. They go into separate rooms. Silence. This silence is deafening. The silence is deafening. And it goes on for days. And it goes on for almost a week. And Catherine goes back to that Swiss Army store and says to that woman, "You have not saved our relationship. You have ruined it with your sin foil. This is disgusting. Why would you even tell me about such a thing, knowing that my curiosity would be piqued so greatly that I would take you up on it, and you've destroyed our relationship. You haven't saved it." And the woman behind the counter said, "We all commit sins, every last one of us. Every single person on this earth commits sins, some greater than others. But it's all about forgiveness, right?" Catherine starts thinking about that. And the woman gets a little bit more emphatic and says, sometimes people kill other people. Sometimes people rob other people. Sometimes people steal from other people. Sometimes people injure other people, psychologically, emotionally, physically. And the good Lord forgives them. So, are you above the Lord? Why can you not forgive others for the same sins that you've committed? Wow, Catherine's that's some deep shit right there, isn't it? Catherine's really thinking about that. She's like, "Hey, you know something? You're right. You're absolutely right." So she races back home. She walks in the door. She goes, "Robert, I need to talk to you." They sit down. They have a little talk, a little chatty-do. And she lays that on him. She's like, we all sin in life. She's kind of repeating what the woman at the Swiss Army store told her. We all commit sins, and, if the good Lord is willing to forgive and have some sort of forgiveness, well, Robert, I forgive you for what you did, and I would hope that you forgive what I did. And he goes, I was thinking about that. Yeah, I'd forgive you too. Consequently, forgiveness saved the relationship. I'm Montagraph, and if can't speak freely, yours simply not free.